The exiles return. The fallen princess. The forbidden wastes earned their name honestly. Nothing grew here except thorns and bitter regret. The land stretched endlessly, a cracked gray desert where the sun burned too hot and the nights froze bone deep. Most people avoided this place. Smart people anyway. But Ilara Nightshade was no longer counted among the people who mattered. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she was dragged from the palace in chains, stripped of her title, her family, and her name. 3 years since her cousin Damien stood before the court with crocodile tears streaming down his face, holding up forged documents that proved her treason. 3 years since her father, King Aldrich, turned his back on her pleas and declared her exiled forever. Princess Ilara Nightshade was dead. What survived was simply Ilara, a ghost with scarred hands and a heart that had learned to beat without hope. She crouched now in the shadow of a twisted rock formation, her dark cloak pulled tight against the wind. Her once beautiful gowns had been replaced by practical leather and worn canvas. Her soft princess hands were now calloused and strong. She had learned to hunt, to fight, to survive in a place that wanted her dead. But survival was not living. It was just refusing to die. The hunter's instinct. Ilara's fingers traced the tracks in the dust. Rabbit, maybe 2 days old. Not fresh enough. She needed something better. Her water supply was running low, and the nearest oasis was a 3-day walk. She had jerky that tasted like boot leather and a handful of wild roots that would keep her alive but not satisfied. This was her life now. Tracking, hiding, surviving. The skills of a rogue, not a princess. She stood slowly, her eyes scanning the horizon. Movement caught her attention. Vultures, circling about half a mile to the east. Something was dead or dying. In the wastes you learned to investigate such things. Sometimes you found food. Sometimes you found danger. Either way, you needed to know. Ilara moved like a shadow, her footsteps silent despite the loose stones. She had learned stealth from necessity. The wastes attracted others like her. Exiles, criminals, desperate souls. Most would kill her for her boots alone. She kept her hand on the knife at her belt, a weapon she had taken from a bandit who learned too late that a princess could fight back. As she drew closer, she heard something that made her freeze. Not the sounds of death, but something worse. A groan. Human. Someone was alive down there. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around. The living were more dangerous than the dead. But something else pulled at her. A feeling she had learned to trust in her exile. Her special gift. The one she had hidden even in the palace. Whispered to her senses. Pain. Genuine suffering. And beneath it something else. Desperation without deception. Against her better judgment, Ilara crept forward to investigate. The enemy at death's door. The ravine was steep, a jagged crack in the earth where flash floods had carved through rock. At the bottom, partially hidden by fallen stones, lay a man. He was big, even crumpled and broken as he was. His clothing, though torn and blood-stained, was fine quality. Dark leather and black cloth that seemed to drink in the light. But it was the symbol on his chest that made Ilara's breath catch. A silver crescent moon pierced by 3 stars. The mark of the Shadow Realm. Her mortal enemy. The kingdoms of Lumina, her homeland, and the Shadow Realm had been at war for generations. Not open warfare, but cold hatred, border skirmishes, and deep suspicion. She had been raised to fear and hate these people. They were everything dark and dangerous in the world. And yet, here one lay dying at her feet. Ilara should have walked away, should have let the desert take him. One less enemy in the world. But as she stared at his face, pale beneath the dust and blood, she felt that pull again. Her gift whispered to her. No deception. No evil intent. Just a man dying alone and afraid. She cursed under her breath in 3 different languages she had learned from fellow exiles. Then she climbed down into the ravine. Up close, she could see his injuries clearly. Deep gashes across his chest, partially bandaged but soaked through with blood. His breathing was shallow and ragged. Fever burned in his skin. Poison, she realized, examining the black veins spreading from his wounds. Someone had used venom on their blade. He would be dead by morning without help. Alara's hands moved before her mind could overthink it. She had learned healing arts from an old hermit who lived in a cave near the eastern edge of the wastes. Forbidden knowledge, he called it, the kind that used blood and will instead of proper medicine. The kind that cost something from the healer. She pulled out her water skin and her small pack of herbs. Her knife sliced open his shirt, revealing the wounds fully. They were deep but not fatal on their own. The poison was the real killer, turning his blood black and slow. "This is stupid, Alara," she muttered to herself, mixing a paste from crushed leaves and her own blood. The old hermit had taught her that healing poison required a price. Life for life. Energy for energy. She would be weak for days after this. But she pressed the paste into his wounds anyway, whispering the words she had been taught. Ancient words that tasted like copper and felt like fire in her throat. The man's eyes snapped open, wild with pain and confusion. They were striking eyes, even clouded with fever. Dark gray like storm clouds, intense and intelligent. They fixed on her face, struggling to focus. "Who?" he gasped, his voice rough as gravel. "Someone stupid enough to save you," Alara replied, pressing more paste into the wounds. "Stay still. This is going to hurt." It did hurt. He gritted his teeth, every muscle tensing as the healing magic burned the poison from his system. But he didn't scream, didn't fight her, just endured, his storm-gray eyes never leaving her face. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the black veins began to recede. His breathing eased. The fever started to break. Alara sat back, exhausted. Her hands trembled. Her head swam. She had given more than she should have, but it worked. He would live. "Thank you," the man whispered, his eyes already closing as healing sleep took him. Alara didn't respond. She was too busy wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her exile. A dangerous awakening. She made a rough camp in the ravine, knowing she was too weak to climb out safely. A small fire, carefully hidden from view above. Some dried meat and hard bread that she forced herself to eat. Water for both of them. The man slept through the afternoon and into the evening. Alara watched him, her knife ready, wondering who he was and what had brought him to the wastes. The Shadow Realm was hundreds of miles north. He was far from home. As the sun set and the temperature dropped, he finally stirred. This time his eyes were clear, alert, and immediately cautious. He tried to sit up, winced at the pain, then took stock of his situation with the practiced calm of a warrior. His eyes found Alara across the fire, found the knife in her hand, found the luminous seal on her worn cloak, the one piece of her old life she had refused to abandon. "You're from Lumina," he said. Not a question, a statement. "And you're from the Shadow Realm," Alara replied evenly. "Seems we both have problems." A ghost of a smile touched his lips despite the pain. "More than you know." He managed to sit up fully, leaning against the ravine wall. In the firelight, she could see him better. Strong features, sharp and angular. Dark hair that fell past his collar. Scars that spoke of many battles. He was young, probably close to her own age of 24, but his eyes held the weight of someone much older. "I am Kale Darkwada," he said, watching her reaction carefully. Alara's blood went cold. She knew that name. Everyone in Lumina knew that name. Kale Darkwada, Crown Prince of the Shadow Realm, heir to the throne, son of the Shadow King who had killed hundreds of her people in border raids. "I should have let you die," she said flatly. "Probably," Kale agreed. "Why didn't you?" That was a good question. Alara didn't have a good answer. "Because I'm apparently an idiot who can't walk away from someone in pain. Conscience is a terrible burden." His tone was dry, almost amused. "I recognize you too, you know. The wanted posters are quite detailed. Princess Alara Nightshade, traitor to the crown, exiled for attempting to assassinate her father and sell kingdom secrets to the Shadow Court." Alara's jaw clenched. "Those charges are lies." "I know," Kale said simply. She stared at him. "What?" I said I know their lies. He shifted, grimacing at the movement. I can always tell when someone is lying. It's a gift I was born with. When I first saw those posters, I knew immediately the charges were false. Someone framed you quite thoroughly. Alara's gift let her sense emotional truth. His gift apparently did something similar. They stared at each other across the fire, two people with abilities they had probably both hidden their entire lives, now suddenly exposed to each other. My cousin Damien, Alara said quietly. He wanted the throne. I was in his way. So he forged documents, bribed witnesses, and destroyed my life in one night. Betrayal by family, Kale said, his voice suddenly bitter. I understand that pain intimately. Poison bonds. Kale explained his situation as the fire burned low. He had been investigating reports of corruption in his father's court. Someone was embezzling funds, manipulating trade agreements, and secretly selling military information. All signs pointed to his uncle, Lord Varys, his father's most trusted advisor. But when Kale presented his evidence to the Shadow Council, Varys turned the accusation around. Claimed Kale was the traitor, trying to frame an innocent man. The council was divided. Kale's father, the Shadow King, demanded more proof. Before Kale could gather it, an assassin came in the night. Poison blades, the kind that left no trace of the wielder. Kale barely escaped with his life, fleeing south into the wastes to hide while the poison slowly killed him. Varys has my younger sister, Kale said, staring into the flames. Lyra. She's only 16. He arrested her on charges of helping me. I know it's a trap to draw me back, but if I don't return, he'll execute her as an example. Alara heard the truth in his words, felt the genuine anguish in his emotional resonance. Whatever else Kale Darkwater might be, he loved his sister desperately. So you're dying of poison, wanted by your own kingdom, and your sister is held hostage, Alara summarized. And I just saved you because I'm cursed with a conscience. Essentially, yes. Kale met her eyes. Though I notice you didn't mention your own situation. Still wanted in Lumina. Still exiled in the wastes. Still alone. The words stung because they were true. Alara poked at the fire with a stick, unwilling to meet his gaze. I had a younger brother, she said quietly. Thomas. He was 10 when I was exiled. He tried to defend me at the trial. Damien had him removed from the court. I haven't heard anything about him since. I don't know if he's alive or dead. I don't know if he hates me or remembers me. I'm too afraid to find out. Silence fell between them, heavy with shared grief. Two heirs to enemy kingdoms, both betrayed, both lost, both alone in a place that wanted them dead. We're quite a pair, Kale said finally, a hint of dark humor in his voice. A pair of fools, Alara agreed. The unlikely bargain. They sat in silence for a long moment, each lost in their own thoughts. The fire crackled between them, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird called out its lonely song. I need to get back to the Shadow Realm, Kale said finally. The poison is purged, thanks to you, but I'm still weak. The journey will take weeks, and I'll be hunted the entire way. Varys will have agents searching for me. That's suicide, Alara pointed out. Yes. Kale's smile was grim. But necessary. My sister's life depends on it. And I need to stop Varys before he destroys everything my family built. Alara studied him across the fire. Crown prince of her enemy kingdom. She should kill him right here, weakened as he was. Should take revenge for every Lumina soldier who died in border skirmishes. Should hate him on principle. But she didn't. Her gift told her he was nothing like the monsters she'd been taught to fear. He was just a man trying to protect his family and his kingdom, same as she had tried to do. I'll make you a deal, Alara heard herself saying, the words coming out before she could stop them. I'll help you get back to your kingdom. I know the wastes better than anyone. I can guide you through safely, keep you alive. Kale's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because you'll owe me. Alara leaned forward, her decision made. When you take down your uncle, when you reclaim your position, you're going to help me. You're gonna help me prove my innocence and take down Damien. Your word as a prince. It was insane. Trusting the enemy. Making deals with the shadow heir. Binding her fate to his. But Alara had learned in 3 years of exile that sometimes the only way forward was through the impossible. Cale stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, painfully, he extended his hand across the fire. You have my word. As a prince and as a man who owes you his life. I will help you reclaim your honor and destroy the one who stole it. Alara reached out and clasped his hand. His grip was firm despite his weakness. She felt the truth of his vow resonate through her gift, solid as stone. Then we have a deal, Prince Cale of the Shadow Realm. And you have my life debt, Princess Alara of Lumina. They held the grip for a moment longer. 2 enemies turned unlikely allies, bound by betrayal and desperate hope. When they finally released hands, something had shifted in the air between them. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. As Alara added more wood to the fire and Cale settled back to rest his healing body, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the ravine's edge above. A scout in dark clothing who had seen everything and heard enough. The figure slipped away silently into the night, racing north with information that would change everything. The lost princess and the poisoned prince had found each other. And in the courts of both kingdoms, powerful men would soon learn that their carefully constructed lies were about to unravel. The storm approaches. They spent 2 more days in the ravine while Cale regained his strength. Alara hunted and gathered, sharing her meager supplies. They talked little at first, old prejudices and distrust making conversation difficult. But necessity forced cooperation, and cooperation slowly bred something like companionship. On the 3rd morning, Cale could stand without swaying. Walk without stumbling. Fight if necessary, though he'd lost his weapons in whatever fight had nearly killed him. We need to move, Alara said, studying the sky. Storm coming. In the wastes, storms kill more than any beast or bandit. Cale looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. She was beautiful in a harsh way, like a sword blade or a winter dawn. Dark hair she kept tied back, sharp features that had been soft once, but were now carved lean by hardship. Eyes the color of amber that saw too much and trusted too little. She was nothing like the soft courtiers of his kingdom. Nothing like the image he'd carried of Lumina nobility. She was a survivor, dangerous and damaged, and somehow still fighting. Lead the way, princess, he said quietly. Just Alara, she corrected. I'm not a princess anymore. And I'm not a prince, Cale replied. Just a man trying to save his sister. They climbed out of the ravine together as the first drops of rain began to fall. Neither of them looked back. There was no point. The past was gone, burned away by betrayal and exile. All they had now was the dangerous road ahead, and each other. 2 enemies walking side by side toward an uncertain future, bound by a bargain that would either save them both or destroy them. The storm came with the fury of the wastes, wind and rain and lightning that turned the world to chaos. But Alara knew where to find shelter, and Cale had the strength to help her reach it. As they huddled in a cave while the storm raged outside, sharing body heat and the last of Alara's dried meat, Cale spoke into the darkness. Thank you for saving me, for helping me, for trusting me when you had every reason not to. Alara didn't respond immediately. Then, in a voice barely audible over the storm, she said, Don't make me regret it. I won't, Cale promised. On my honor and my life I won't. Outside, the storm screamed and raged. But inside the cave, 2 lost souls had found something neither expected. Not friendship, not yet. Not trust, not completely. But hope. Fragile and desperate and dangerous. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could both go home again. The journey has only begun. Alara and Cale must cross the wastes, evade hunters from both kingdoms, and uncover the conspiracy that destroyed their lives. But with each step north, they draw closer to the truth. Their betrayers didn't act alone, and the web of lies connects both kingdoms in ways neither could imagine. Will they survive the journey? Will their fragile alliance hold? And what happens when two hearts scarred by betrayal begin to heal in each other's presence? The wastes finally gave way to civilization after 12 days of hard travel. Alara and Kale emerged from the barren gray desert into the borderlands, a stretch of disputed territory that belonged to neither Lumina nor the Shadow Realm. Here, in the towns that clung to survival between two hostile kingdoms, people asked few questions and remembered even fewer answers. The town of Ashenmere sat at the crossroads of three trade routes, a place where merchants from both kingdoms met in uneasy commerce. Its buildings were a mix of Lumina's white stone and the Shadow Realm's dark timber, as if the town itself couldn't decide which side it belonged to. Alara pulled her hood lower as they approached the gates. Kale had acquired a similar cloak from an abandoned camp they'd found days earlier. Together, they looked like any other pair of travelers, dusty and tired and unremarkable. "Stay close," Alara murmured. "Ashenmere has eyes everywhere. Spies from both kingdoms pay good coin for information." "I'm familiar with the place," Kale replied quietly. "My father used to send agents here. I came once myself years ago before." He trailed off, before everything fell apart. Alara understood that sentiment perfectly. They entered through the western gate, joining the flow of merchants and travelers. The guards barely glanced at them, too busy collecting entry tolls to care about two more hooded figures. Inside, Ashenmere was a chaos of sound and smell. Market stalls crowded the main street, selling everything from Lumina silk to Shadow Realm steel. Languages mixed and mingled, creating a constant babble. The air smelled of spices, roasted meat, and the underlying tang of too many people living too close together. "We need information," Kale said, scanning the crowd. "Varus will have sent hunters. I need to know how many and where they're searching. And I need news from Lumina," Alara added, her chest tight with anxiety. 3 years without word of her family, her kingdom, her brother. The not knowing was sometimes worse than the exile itself. They found an inn called the Broken Compass, the kind of establishment that catered to people who valued discretion over comfort. The common room was dark and smoky, filled with the low murmur of conversations that stopped whenever anyone new entered. Alara and Kale took a corner table, ordered weak ale and stale bread, and listened. The messenger's truth. Information came in pieces, fragments overheard from other tables. Talk of troop movements near the northern border. Whispers about increased patrols in the wastes. A reward posted for information about a dangerous trader matching Kale's description. But it was the serving girl who brought the news that changed everything. She was young, maybe 17, with sharp eyes that had seen too much. When she brought their second round of ale, she leaned in close and whispered, "You're looking for news from Lumina. Yes? I see it in your face, lady. You have that hungry look." Alara's hand moved to her knife. "I don't know what you mean." "Peace." The girl raised her hands.
No es APY.
"But I know someone who is, or was. He's been gathering information, dangerous information about the Lumina court. Says he's looking for someone. A princess who was wrongly accused." Alara's heart stopped. She glanced at Kale, who nodded slightly. They had nothing to lose. "Where?" Alara asked. "Back room. Third door on the left." "He's been waiting here for weeks. Like he knew someone would come." The girl hesitated. "He's one of yours. The soldier. Says his name is Marcus." The world tilted. Marcus. Captain Marcus Thorne. Her father's personal guard. Her own friend since childhood. She thought he'd abandoned her like everyone else. Thought he'd believed Damien's lies. "It could be a trap," Kale warned quietly. "I know." But Alara was already standing. "I have to see." The back hallway was narrow and dark. Doors on either side leading to private rooms where deals were made and secrets traded. Alara found the third door, took a breath, and knocked. "Come." The voice was familiar, worn with time but unmistakable. She opened the door and saw him. Captain Marcus Thorne, older now, grayer, with new scars on his weathered face. He sat at a small table, a candle burning between them, and when he looked up and saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "Princess," he breathed. Gods, it really is you. The evidence gathered. Marcus stood so fast his chair toppled. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then Alara was across the room, and he caught her in a fierce embrace, the kind of father gives a lost daughter. I thought you were dead, Marcus said, his voice rough. After you were exiled, I heard nothing. No word. I feared the wastes had taken you. I'm hard to kill, Alara managed, pulling back. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. 3 years she'd been holding back tears. She wouldn't break now. Cale cleared his throat from the doorway. Marcus's hand went to his sword immediately, his soldier's instincts sharp. Wait! Alara stepped between them. He's with me. It's complicated. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he took in Cale's bearing, his fine clothes beneath the road dust. Shadow Realm, he said flatly. Prince Cale Darkwater, Cale confirmed, stepping inside and closing the door. And before you try to kill me, know that I saved your princess's life in the wastes. We have an alliance. Alliance. Marcus looked between them, disbelief warring with trust for Alara's judgment. Finally, he sighed and righted his chair. The world has gone mad. See, both of you, we have much to discuss. They sat. Marcus poured wine from a bottle that had seen better days. His hands shook slightly as he filled 3 cups. I never believed the charges, Marcus said, looking at Alara. Not for a moment. I knew you, knew your heart. But I was one voice against a tide. Damien had the court in his pocket. Lords who owed him favors. Merchants he'd enriched. Nobles he'd blackmailed. Your father. Marcus's face twisted with pain. Your father was grieving your mother's death. Damien used that grief, whispered poison in his ear, made him believe his own daughter had betrayed him. And Thomas. Alara's voice cracked on her brother's name. My brother. What happened to him? Marcus's expression softened. He's alive. He paused, choosing words carefully. He's changed. Damien keeps him close, uses him as a puppet. Thomas is being groomed as the proper heir, the one loyal to the new regime. But I've seen him, Princess. I've seen the way he looks at Damien when he thinks no one is watching. Your brother remembers, and he doesn't believe the lies. Relief flooded through Alara so powerfully she nearly collapsed. Thomas was alive. He didn't hate her. I've spent 3 years gathering evidence, Marcus continued. Proof of Damien's crimes. Forged documents, bribed witnesses, secret payments. I have names, dates, amounts. Enough to bring him down, if we can get it before the king. Why haven't you? Cale asked, his strategic mind already working. Because Damien controls access to the king. No one sees King Aldrich without his approval now. He's isolated your father, Princess, made him dependent. Anyone who tries to speak truth is branded a traitor. Marcus pulled a leather satchel from beneath the table. This is everything. 3 years of careful investigation. But it's worthless if we can't present it. Alara reached for the satchel, but Cale's hand stopped her. Wait. This is too convenient. After 3 years, we arrive in Ashimir and find the one person with evidence. The one person who can help. Marcus's jaw tightened. You're right to be suspicious, Shadow Prince. But I'm not here by chance. I have informants throughout the borderlands. Word reached me days ago that someone matching the princess's description was seen traveling north with a companion. I gambled that she'd come here. This is the only safe town between the wastes and the kingdoms. He's telling the truth, Alara said quietly. Her gift sang with Marcus's sincerity, his loyalty, his desperate hope. Cale studied Marcus for a long moment, then nodded. Then we have more in common than I thought, because I have evidence too. Evidence of my uncle's treachery in the Shadow Realm. Marcus leaned forward. Your uncle? Lord Varys. You know of him? Know of him? Marcus pulled out a folded paper from his satchel. I have records of payment from Damien to someone identified only as the Northern Lord. Large sums, transferred through shadow banks in Ashimir. I could never confirm who received them, But the timing. He spread several documents on the table. Every payment corresponds with a major decision in the Shadow Court. Border disputes ruled in Lumina's favor. Trade agreements that benefited Damien's merchant allies. Military intelligence that somehow found its way to our side. Kale stared at the documents, his face darkening. Varys. He's been taking bribes from Damien. Selling my kingdom's interests. It's worse than that, Elara said, her mind racing as the pieces fell into place. They're not just working separately. They're working together. A conspiracy spanning both kingdoms. The web of lies. They spent the next hour laying out everything they knew, connecting threads that stretched across borders and through years of careful manipulation. Damien wanted the Lumina throne. Varys wanted power in the Shadow Realm. Together, they'd been systematically removing obstacles and isolating the true rulers. It started with my mother's death, Elara said, her voice hollow. I always thought it was natural, a sudden illness. But the timing, it was right before I would have been formally named heir. With mother gone, father became vulnerable. Damien stepped in as his comfort, his trusted cousin. And my sister, Kale added, his hands clenched into fists. Lyra. Varys has her because she's the spare heir. If he eliminates me, she's next in line. But she's young, easy to control. He probably plans to marry her off to some ally and rule through her. They're creating a power vacuum in both kingdoms, Marcus said grimly, and positioning themselves to fill it. But why? Why go to such lengths? What's the endgame? War, Elara and Kale said simultaneously. They looked at each other, the same terrible understanding dawning. They want our kingdoms to destroy each other, Elara continued. Keep us focused on external enemies while they consolidate power internally. If Lumina and the Shadow Realm go to full war, both will be weakened. And in the chaos, they'll rule the ruins, Kale finished. Damien in the south, Varys in the north. Allies rather than enemies. They'll have exactly what they want. The candle flickered between them, casting dancing shadows on walls that suddenly felt too close. The conspiracy was bigger than any of them had imagined. Not just personal betrayal, but a plot that could destroy thousands of lives. There's more, Marcus said reluctantly. He pulled out another document, this one sealed with black wax. I intercepted this 2 weeks ago. It's coded, but I've been working on the translation. As near as I can tell, it's plans for an incident. Something to trigger open war between the kingdoms. What kind of incident? Kale demanded. An assassination. Of someone important enough that both sides will demand blood. Marcus looked between them. Someone like a crown prince. Or a returned princess. The implication hung in the air, poisonous and clear. If either of them appeared publicly, they'd be walking targets. Their deaths would be the spark that ignited the war Damien and Varys wanted. We need more information, Elara said, forcing her voice to stay steady. We need to know exactly what they're planning and when. We need proof that connects them directly. There's someone who might help, Marcus said slowly. A merchant named Silvio Varon. He runs a trading company that operates in both kingdoms. He's also a fence for stolen goods, a broker of secrets, and completely amoral. But he's reliable. If anyone knows what Damien and Varys are planning next, it's him. Where do we find him? Kale asked. Marcus smiled grimly. Right here in Ashenmere. He has an office above the jeweler's shop on Merchant's Row. But approaching him is dangerous. He sells information to the highest bidder. If Damien or Varys pay more than we can, then we don't buy information, Elara said, her mind already forming a plan. We steal it. The merchant's secrets. Merchant's Row was the wealthy heart of Ashenmere, where traders from both kingdoms conducted business in gilded neutrality. The buildings were tall and prosperous, their windows filled with goods from across the known world. The jeweler's shop sat in the center, its display cases glittering with gold and gems. Above it, shuttered windows marked Silvio Varon's office. Lights burned behind those shutters even as midnight approached. Alara crouched on the roof of the building across the street, Kale beside her. Marcus was below, ready to create a distraction if needed. "You're sure about this?" Kale whispered. "No," Alara admitted. "But we need to know what's in those records. Marcus can only tell us what he's uncovered from the outside. Varen keeps the real secrets. Breaking into a master spy's office. This is insane. Welcome to my life." Alara checked the rope secured to the roof. "You can stay here if you want. And miss the fun? Not a chance." Kale's smile was grim. "Besides, someone needs to watch your back." They'd been traveling together for 2 weeks now. Slowly, carefully, trust had built between them. Not complete trust, not yet. But enough that Alara knew he'd fight beside her. Enough that Kale knew she'd do the same. She swung across the gap between buildings, her hands gripping the rope tight. The jeweler's shop had a small balcony behind Varen's office, probably for private meetings. Alara landed silently, years of surviving in the wastes making her movements sure. Kale followed a moment later, his warrior's grace evident despite his recent injuries. Together, they approached the shuttered window. Inside, they could hear voices. Varen wasn't alone. Alara pressed her ear to the shutter, listening. 2 men. One was smooth and educated, speaking with the accent of Lumina nobility. The other was deeper, rougher, with the clipped tones of Shadow Realm military. "Assured my employer that the merchandise would be delivered," the Lumina voice said. "And I've assured mine that payment is guaranteed," the Shadow voice replied. "But there's been a complication. The prince lives." Alara's blood went cold. They were talking about Kale.